The wake-up call. Rebecca Hayes pressed snooze. Exactly once before, her eyes opened at 5:30 a.m. The New York City skyline glowed through her bedroom window, and she smiled at the familiar view from her studio apartment in Chelsea. 3 years of working for Sterling Media Group had taught her that punctuality was survival, and she had become a master of the morning routine. By 6:15 a.m., Rebecca stood before her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection with careful attention. Her dark brown hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, freshly styled. The charcoal gray dress suit fit perfectly, professional, yet elegant. Everything was ready except for one final touch. The bold decision. Her makeup bag held an array of neutral lipsticks in various shades of pink and nude. These were her safe choices, the colors that never drew attention or comment. But today, her fingers reached past them to grasp a tube she had purchased 3 months ago, but never worn to work. The label read Crimson Confidence, and the color was unmistakably, unapologetically red. Rebecca twisted the tube open and applied the rich color carefully. The transformation was immediate. Her full lips became a statement, her brown eyes seemed brighter, and her entire face radiated a confidence she rarely allowed herself to feel. She had always been the woman behind the scenes, the one who made everything run smoothly while remaining invisible. But today felt different. Today, she wanted to be seen. The decision came from somewhere deep inside, a place that was tired of shrinking herself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. At 27, she had spent her entire adult life being careful, measured, and appropriate. This lipstick felt like a small rebellion, a whisper of who she might become if she stopped asking for permission. The Sterling Tower. Rebecca arrived at Sterling Media Group headquarters at 6:50 a.m. 10 minutes earlier than her usual time. The security guard Thomas greeted her with his customary warm smile. "Looking sharp today, Miss Hayes? That color suits you." "Thank you, Thomas," Rebecca replied, feeling a flush of pleasure at the compliment. Maybe this decision was not so rebellious after all. Maybe it was simply allowing herself to exist fully. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt longer than usual. Rebecca checked her reflection in the polished metal doors, reaffirming her choice. The red lipstick had not smudged or faded. She looked polished, professional, and yes, powerful. The executive suite was quiet when she entered. Rebecca moved through her morning tasks with practiced efficiency. Fresh coffee brewing in the Italian espresso machine that James Whitmore insisted upon, documents arranged precisely on his massive desk. The morning financial reports pulled up on the tablet, ready for his review. Everything had to be perfect because James noticed imperfection the way sharks noticed blood in water. The storm. James Whitmore entered his office at 7:25 a.m. 5 minutes later than his usual time. At 39 years old, he commanded every room he entered with his presence. Tall and broad-shouldered, steel gray eyes and dark hair just beginning to show silver at the temples, he had built Sterling Media Group from a small publishing house into a multimedia empire. He expected excellence because he embodied it. Rebecca stood as he entered, holding his coffee at the exact temperature he preferred. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Your coffee and the morning reports are ready." James took the cup without looking at her, his attention already on his phone. This was normal. Rebecca had learned not to expect pleasantries or small talk. But then he glanced up, and his entire body went rigid. His eyes fixed on her face, specifically on her lips, and something dark flashed across his expression. "What is that?" His voice was cold, cutting through the air like a blade. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. "Sir, that lipstick? What were you thinking?" James set his coffee down with deliberate force. "This is a professional environment, Miss Hayes. You represent this company, and by extension, you represent me. That color is completely inappropriate." The words hit Rebecca like physical blows. Around them, the office had begun to fill with early arrivals. She could feel eyes turning toward them, people slowing their pace to witness the scene. Heat flooded her face, but whether from embarrassment or anger, she could not tell. "The public humiliation, Mr. Whitmore? I assure you my appearance is professional," Rebecca managed, keeping her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. James stepped closer, his voice low but carrying in the sudden silence of the office. "You look like you were going to a nightclub, not to work. Remove it now." The command was absolute. Rebecca felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone who was now openly staring. Jennifer from accounting had frozen mid-step. David from marketing was not even pretending to look away. They were all watching Rebecca's humiliation play out like a performance. "Excuse me?" Rebecca whispered. Turning toward the restroom, she walked with measured steps, refusing to run despite the desperate urge to flee. Behind her, she heard James bark orders at his staff, already moving on, as if he had not just shattered something fundamental inside another human being. The bathroom door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a prison cell locking. The breaking point, Rebecca gripped. Ouch! The marble sink and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her had red-rimmed eyes and a mouth painted in crimson confidence that now felt like crimson shame. How had she been so foolish? She had worked for James Whitmore for 3 years. She knew his expectations, his rigid standards, his need for control over every detail. What had possessed her to think she could deviate from his unspoken rules? With shaking hands, Rebecca pulled paper towels from the dispenser and began to remove the lipstick. Each swipe left a red stain on the white paper like evidence of a crime. The color that had made her feel powerful now seemed garish and obvious. She scrubbed until her lips were bare, slightly swollen from the rough treatment, and then she scrubbed some more. When her lips were finally nude and raw, Rebecca allowed herself 3 deep breaths before reapplying a pale pink shade from her purse. This was the color of invisibility, of safety, of knowing her place. She checked her appearance one final time, ensuring no trace of rebellion remained, and then returned to her desk. The aftermath. James did not look up when she re-entered the office suite. He was already on a phone call, pacing before the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. Rebecca sat at her desk and opened her laptop, determined to lose herself in work and forget the morning's disaster. But throughout the day, she caught glimpses of concern from coworkers. Jennifer brought her coffee without being asked. David sent a sympathetic email. Even Thomas, the security guard, gave her an extra long look when she left for lunch. As if checking that she was okay, Rebecca was not okay. She felt hollowed out, diminished. The red lipstick remained in her purse, a small tube of defiance that she had neither the courage to throw away nor the strength to wear again. And beneath the hurt and embarrassment, something else was growing. Something that felt suspiciously like anger that evening. Rebecca rode the subway home. She replayed the morning in her mind. She thought about the way James had looked at her, not with professional concern, but with something that seemed almost like fear. She thought about his words, about representation and appropriateness. But mostly, she thought about the feeling she had experienced that morning before everything fell apart. The feeling of being seen, of taking up space, refusing to apologize for existing boldly. By the time Rebecca reached her apartment, she had made a decision. She would not wear the red lipstick again tomorrow. She was not ready for that fight, but she would not throw it away either. Instead, she would keep it as a reminder that somewhere inside her lived a woman who wanted more than invisibility, who deserved more than scraps of acknowledgement from a man who could not see past his own need for control. That woman was still there, waiting. And Rebecca Hayes was beginning to suspect that eventually, inevitably, that woman would demand to be heard. The invitation 2 weeks passed in tense silence. Rebecca performed her duties with mechanical precision, arriving early and leaving late. James Whitmore seemed satisfied with her return to neutrality, never mentioning the lipstick incident again. But Rebecca noticed things she had not seen before. The way he watched her when he thought she was not looking. The slight softening in his voice when they worked alone. The coffee he had delivered to her desk one afternoon without explanation. She did not know what to make of these small gestures. Were they apologies? Olive branches? Or simply her imagination finding patterns where none existed? On a Thursday afternoon, James called her into his office. "The Hudson Foundation Gala is Saturday night. I need you there." Rebecca looked up from her notes. "To coordinate logistics?" To attend as my guest. James did not meet her eyes as he said it. This is a critical networking opportunity. Diana Rothschild will be there. She is considering selling Rothschild Communications, and I want Sterling Media to be her first choice. I need someone who can help me navigate the social aspects while I focus on business. It was not really a request, and they both knew it. Of course, Mr. Whitmore. What time should I arrive? The car will pick you up at 7. James finally looked at her, and something in his expression was almost vulnerable. Thank you, Rebecca. The use of her first name startled her. In 3 years, he had rarely called her anything but Miss Hayes. The preparation Saturday arrived with surprising speed. Rebecca stood in her apartment, staring at the 3 dresses laid out on her bed. The black one was safe and elegant. The navy blue was sophisticated and understated. The emerald green was beautiful, but bolder than her usual choices. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend. Natalie, which dress? Rebecca sent photos of all 3. Natalie's response was immediate. Green, and for the love of everything, with a red lipstick. Rebecca's heart jumped. She had told Natalie about the incident, about the humiliation and the anger that still simmered beneath her professional facade. Natalie had been furious on her behalf, calling James every name imaginable and insisting that Rebecca should quit. But Rebecca had not quit. She needed this job, and more than that. She was not ready to let James Whitmore drive her away from a career she had built through hard work and dedication now. Standing in her apartment with evening approaching, Rebecca made a choice. She put on the green dress. It hugged her curves and made her skin glow. She styled her hair in an elegant updo, and when she reached for her makeup, her hand hovered over the neutral lipsticks before moving decisively to the crimson confidence. The red color transformed her appearance just as it had 2 weeks ago. But this time, Rebecca felt something different. Not rebellion for its own sake, but a quiet reclamation of her right to exist as she chose. If James objected, she would simply leave the gala. She would no longer shrink herself for anyone's comfort. The gala, the Hudson Foundation Gala, was held at the Plaza Hotel, and the ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over women in designer gowns, and men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. Rebecca had attended events like this before, but always as staff, never as a guest. James was waiting near the entrance when she arrived. He wore a classic black tuxedo that emphasized his commanding presence. When he saw her, his eyes widened, and he went completely still. Rebecca braced herself for criticism, for another public humiliation, instead. James exhaled slowly and said, "You look stunning." The compliment caught Rebecca so off guard that she nearly stumbled. "Thank you." His eyes lingered on her lips for a moment longer than necessary before he offered his arm. "Shall we?" The evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Rebecca discovered she was good at this, remembering names and making connections that James could follow up on later. Several people complimented her dress, her style, her presence. No one suggested she looked inappropriate or unprofessional. And then, across the crowded ballroom, Rebecca saw her. Diana Rothschild. Diana Rothschild was legendary in media circles. At 53, she had built Rothschild Communications into an international powerhouse through sheer brilliance and determination. She was tall and striking, with silver blonde hair styled in a sleek bob and an air of absolute confidence, and she was wearing the most perfect shade of red lipstick Rebecca had ever seen. "That is Diana," James murmured, tension evident in his voice. "I need to make a good impression." They approached together, and Diana turned to greet them with a warm smile. "James Whitmore, I have been hoping to speak with you, Mrs. Rothschild. The pleasure is mine." James shook her hand firmly. "May I introduce Rebecca Hayes, my executive assistant and trusted advisor." Diana's intelligent blue eyes swept over Rebecca, lingering on her lips. A knowing smile curved her mouth. "Rebecca, what a pleasure. That color is absolutely perfect on you." "Thank you," Rebecca replied, feeling a surge of gratitude toward this woman she had just met. "I admire your work tremendously." "Walk with me," Diana said, linking her arm through Rebecca's in a gesture that was both casual and proprietary. James followed, clearly surprised by the development. The conversation as they moved through the ballroom. Diana spoke in a low voice that carried authority. I have been watching the media industry for 30 years, Rebecca. Do you know what I have learned? What is that, Mrs. Rothschild? Call me Diana, and I have learned that the women who succeed are the ones who refuse to diminish themselves. We are told to be quiet, professional, appropriate. Those are simply code words for invisible. Diana paused beside a tall window overlooking Central Park. That lipstick you are wearing is not just makeup. It is a declaration. It says, you refuse to apologize for taking up space. Rebecca felt tears threaten, but blinked them back. Someone recently told me it was inappropriate for a professional setting. Diana's expression hardened. Someone was threatened by your confidence. That says everything about them, and nothing about you. She glanced at James, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. Tell me, Rebecca, have you ever considered what you might achieve if you were not spending all your energy making yourself smaller? The question hit Rebecca like a thunderbolt. She had spent 3 years, her entire career, focused on being the perfect assistant, anticipating needs, solving problems, remaining in the background. She had become so good at being invisible that she had forgotten how to be seen. The viral moment what happened next changed everything. A social media influencer named Casey Warner approached Diana for a quick interview. Casey had millions of followers and was known for her coverage of business and philanthropy events. She was streaming live to her audience. Diana Rothschild. Can I ask you about your incredible success? Casey gushed, holding up her phone. Diana smiled graciously. Of course. What advice would you give to young women trying to make it in business? Diana glanced at Rebecca, then directly into the camera. Wear the red lipstick. Casey laughed, confused. I am sorry, what? Wear the red lipstick, Diana repeated, her voice clear and firm. Whatever that means for you, whatever bold choice you keep avoiding because you are worried about being appropriate or professional, or whatever excuse you are using to stay small, make that choice. Wear the red lipstick, speak the truth, take the risk, demand the raise. Stop apologizing for existing powerfully. She turned slightly, drawing Rebecca into the frame. This brilliant young woman is wearing red lipstick tonight. I guarantee someone told her it was too much, too bold, too something. But she wore it anyway, and she looks magnificent. That courage, that refusal to shrink, that is what creates change. The live stream had thousands of viewers in the moment, but by morning, it would have millions. The shift after the interview, James pulled Rebecca aside. His face was pale, his usual composure shaken. Can we talk privately? They found a quiet alcove away from the crowd. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of agitation she had never seen from him before. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. What I said about your lipstick 2 weeks ago was wrong. It was not about professionalism. It was about control. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there was startling. You looked so confident, so beautiful, and I realized I did not know how to handle seeing you that way. I have spent 3 years keeping you at a distance, convincing myself it was appropriate because you work for me. But the truth is, I have been terrified of what I feel. Rebecca's heart pounded. What you feel? I am attracted to you, Rebecca. I have been since the day you interviewed for the position. And seeing you confident and bold made me panic because it meant I could not hide behind professional boundaries anymore. So I lashed out. James's voice was raw with honesty. I humiliated you to regain control, and that was unforgivable. For 3 years, Rebecca had imagined this moment in various ways. Sometimes James declared his feelings and she fell into his arms. Sometimes she rejected him coldly, making him feel a fraction of the pain he had caused her. But standing here now with the real moment unfolding, she felt neither triumph nor anger. She felt tired. I accept your apology, Rebecca said carefully. But an apology does not erase what happened. You used your power to humiliate me publicly because you could not handle your own emotions. That is not romance.
Hey, James.
That is toxicity. I know. James looked devastated. I know, and I have no right to ask for anything from you. But I am going to try to be better. I am going to prove that I can be the man who deserves someone like you. Do not change for me, Rebecca said firmly. If you change, do it because you recognize that how you treated me was wrong, regardless of your feelings. Do it because you want to be better for yourself. She walked away before he could respond, her head high and her red lips unwavering. The morning. After Rebecca woke Sunday morning to her phone exploding with notifications, bleary-eyed, she checked social media and gasped. Diana's, where the red lipstick moment had gone viral. The hashtag where the red lipstick was trending worldwide with millions of posts. Women everywhere were sharing photos in bold lipstick, telling stories of times they had been told to be smaller, quieter, less. And Rebecca's face was in many of those posts. Captured standing beside Diana, a symbol of the courage to exist boldly. Her email inbox was flooded too. Friend requests, interview requests, and buried among them, a message marked urgent from Diana Rothschild herself. Rebecca, I hope you will forgive the forward nature of this email. After speaking with you last night, I did some research into your background. Your work is exceptional. I would like to discuss an opportunity with you at Rothschild Communications. Please call me at your earliest convenience, Diana. Rebecca read the email 3 times, her hands trembling. This was the opportunity she had dreamed of, but never allowed herself to truly imagine. Working for Diana Rothschild would mean autonomy, respect, and a chance to build something meaningful. It would also mean leaving. James Whitmore. The Monday morning Rebecca arrived at Sterling Media Group Monday morning wearing red lipstick. Not as rebellion, not as statement, but simply because she wanted to. Several co-workers smiled at her, some giving thumbs up. Jennifer from accounting was wearing a bold burgundy shade herself. You are famous, Jennifer whispered as Rebecca passed her desk. Everyone is talking about that video. James was already in his office when Rebecca arrived with his coffee. He looked up, saw her lips, and a complicated expression crossed his face. Good morning, Rebecca. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. I saw the video. Diana's speech was powerful. He paused. I am proud of you. The words should have meant something, but they felt hollow. 3 years of criticism, of being kept at arm's length, of having her confidence systematically eroded, could not be erased by one apology and a compliment.
Thank you.
Rebecca said neutrally. Your 9 o'clock meeting is in the conference room. I have prepared the materials, Rebecca. Wait. James stood, moving around his desk. Can we talk about what I said Saturday night? There is nothing to discuss professionally, Rebecca replied. And personally, I need time to think. She left before he could press further, returning to her desk with her heart racing. Diana's email sat in her inbox like a doorway to a different future. But walking through it meant making a choice that terrified her. The honest conversation over the next week. James transformed in ways Rebecca had never imagined possible. He started acknowledging her contributions in meetings, giving her credit publicly for strategies she developed. He asked her opinion on decisions and actually listened to her answers. He stopped hovering and micromanaging. Trusting her judgment, it was everything Rebecca had wanted, arriving years too late. On Friday afternoon, James asked her to dinner. Not as boss and employee, he clarified quickly. As 2 people who need to talk honestly, Rebecca agreed, curiosity overcoming caution. They met at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, far from the corporate haunts where they might be seen. Over wine and pasta, James told her things he had never shared before. About his father, a demanding man who had taught him that emotion was weakness and control was strength. About building Sterling Media through ruthless determination, while sacrificing every personal relationship. About the loneliness of being at the top with no one to trust. I do not know how to be vulnerable, James admitted, his usually confident voice uncertain. I have spent 20 years building walls, and you are the first person who ever made me want to tear them down. That terrified me. So you hurt me instead, Rebecca said quietly. Yes, James met her eyes. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I want to try, Rebecca. I want to learn how to be better. Not just as your boss, but as a man who cares about you deeply. Rebecca's phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it, focusing on James's face, on the genuine emotion there. 3 years ago, she would have given anything to hear these words. Even 2 weeks ago, before the gala, she might have fallen into his arms with relief and hope, but Diana's words echoed in her mind. Have you ever considered what you might achieve if you were not spending all your energy making yourself smaller? The decision I received a job offer from Diana Rothschild, Rebecca said into the silence, Director of Strategic Communications at Rothschild Communications. It is everything I have ever wanted professionally. Are you going to take it? I do not know yet. Rebecca twisted her wine glass, watching the red liquid swirl. Part of me wants to stay, to see if you can really change, to explore what might exist between us. But another part of me wonders if staying would just be another way of making myself smaller. You would not be smaller, James protested. I would elevate you, promote you, make you a partner. Rebecca challenged gently. Or would I always be Rebecca Hayes, the assistant who got involved with her boss? Would every success be whispered about as favoritism? Would I ever truly know my own worth? The questions hung in the air between them. James looked stricken, but he did not argue because they both knew the truth. I love you, James, said suddenly, the words raw and desperate. I know I have no right to say that after how I have treated you, but it is true. I love your intelligence, your strength, your refusal to break even when I tried to diminish you. I love the way you see the world and the way you make me want to be better. I love you, Rebecca, and I am terrified of losing you. Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks. I care about you too, James. But caring about someone is not enough if being with them means betraying myself. And staying here, staying with you, I am afraid that is what it would mean. The resolution they sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them both. Finally, James spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Then go. Rebecca looked up, startled. Take the job with Diana, James continued, each word clearly costing him. Take the opportunity to discover who you are when you are not managing my chaos. Build something incredible. Become the leader I always should have recognized you could be. James, if what we have is real, it will survive you working somewhere else, he said, meeting her eyes with painful honesty. And if it does not survive, then it was never strong enough to build a life on anyway. You deserve more than being someone's assistant, Rebecca. You deserve to be the visionary, the decision maker, the one everyone looks to for guidance. Rebecca realized this was love. Not the passionate declarations or grand gestures, but this moment of James choosing her growth over his comfort. It did not erase the hurt or undo the damage, but it showed he was capable of change. I am going to accept Diana's offer, Rebecca said, the decision crystallizing as she spoke. I need to know who I am outside of your shadow. I need to prove to myself that I can succeed on my own merit. I understand. James reached across the table, taking her hand. Can I ask one thing? What? Do not close the door completely. Let me prove I can be better. Let me show you that I can love you without trying to control you. His grip tightened slightly. Take 6 months, a year, however long you need. Build your career with Diana. Become everything you are meant to be. And if when you are standing in your own power, if you still want to explore what might exist between us, I will be here, waiting. No pressure, no expectations. Just hope. Rebecca nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The new beginning, 2 weeks later. Rebecca walked into Rothschild's Communications for her first day as Director of Strategic Communications. She wore a charcoal gray suit and her signature red lipstick. Diana greeted her personally, showing her to an office with windows overlooking the Hudson River. Welcome to the team, Rebecca. I have a feeling you are going to do extraordinary things here, Rebecca believed her. For the first time in her professional life, she was not making herself smaller to fit someone else's vision. She was bold, unapologetic, and powerful. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. Congratulations on your first day. I am proud of you. Rebecca smiled and tucked the phone away. The future was uncertain, and she did not know if she and James would ever find their way back to each other. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never again remove her red lipstick for anyone, She had finally learned to wear it for herself.